What's a habit that makes a guy instantly unattractive? Story 1. Lying over mundane things usually leads to not communicating over things that could be considered confrontational. This because he's a conflict avoidant, lying about the tiniest things getting caught and making the whole situation worse than being tactfully direct. This needs to be higher. Goes hand in hand with blaming anyone and everyone for their mistakes. If someone is constantly complaining that they've been screwed over here, there, and everywhere, I automatically assume they're the problem. Girlfriends go crazy on them for no reason. Boss had it out for them, so they're fired. Assholes at the bar always pick fights with them. People who are conflict avoidant are usually so because being honest in the past was met with conflict. For example, an ex once asked for my opinion on her clothes. I politely said I didn't think they suited her, and she went on for 30 minutes about how much they cost and how she bought them. Especially for me, and how ungrateful I was. After that, I learned that with her it's better to tell her what she wants to hear because it spared me the 30-minute complaining. If you want to hear the truth, then you need to be sure that you can accept it without having a really negative reaction. And when you catch them in the lie and ask them about it, they act like it wasn't a big deal, play dumb, or make up silly excuses about the lie. I recently caught a guy lying about his age. He accidentally let it slip that he was older. So I said, "Wait, I thought you were XX years old." He said, "Oh, I'm XY years old." I asked to see his ID. He was even older than the age that he had just told me when he was correcting the first number. I was like, "Okay, so from your ID I can see that you are actually XZ years old." And he said, "I don't know how old I am. I'm confused with numbers. I get them confused all the time." This man is an engineer. My freaking roommate. I ask if he takes the dog out in the morning before he leaves for work, just because I need to know if I need to. It's no big deal. I do not care. But he'll lie and say that he did just so that he doesn't look bad. Then the dog will pant and beg to go out, and the harness hasn't moved from where I last left it, so I know he's lying. I call him on it and he says, "Oh, I must have dreamt taking him out," completely unironically. Like, what the fuck, just say no you didn't. He's so afraid of confrontation no matter how menial. I don't necessarily agree with this. People lie for many reasons, man. For instance, my parents are almost always fighting. Like, my parents, I don't know, maybe love each other, but just might fight on any topic. Regarding most topics, I walk on eggshells around them because I don't know what might just trigger another long-drawn 5 to 6 days argument between them. Because of this, I have become a pathological liar. Mostly white lies, but yeah, I lie over mundane things too. But I have never omitted or lied about fundamental stuff that is confrontational. Also, I'm not trying to attack you here. You may have had a different bad experience with such a habit. Story 2. Can't do anything for himself. I'm talking about basics like laundry and washing dishes, basic cleaning. There was a post on here a few weeks ago about a woman debating staying with her partner because he literally couldn't do anything. He apparently broke things or left things lying around, etc. But then she'd say, "Oh, but he's so sweet." I don't know, that might seem okay in the beginning, but long term that would drive me absolutely bonkers. I remember a post of a husband admitting that he pretends to not know how to do things. Asked to do laundry, make a mess. Do the dishes, break a plate. Make dinner, absolutely ruin it. Just so eventually his wife just stopped asking him to do stuff because he'd make it worse. I think the term is weaponized incompetence. I had a friend tell me that, when they were still married, her ex-husband would never do anything around the house. His mentality was since she was a stay-at-home mom, it was her job to take care of the house. But she would overstimulate a lot of times and he would still not do anything. What got me was when she said that he would spit his chewing tobacco in bottles but would never throw them away and leave them all over the house. He even spat down her straw one time and she drank from it. I almost couldn't believe it when I heard it. It blows my mind that some people can really be like this. My housemate is charismatic and stupidly handsome, but he struggles with stuff like that. I'm pretty clean and also a strange person, so I really actually like keeping the place clean. Girls come over and I can tell how stoked they are when it's clean, or if it isn't, I can tell how annoyed they are. One came upstairs, saw how much dirty laundry was on his floor, and just left instead of banging him. He's starting to get it, but he's just never been domesticated before. Men who live with only women get domesticated. He's never had that. Story 3. Poor control over their anger. And shutting down emotions but calling it stoicism is the other extreme side of the very same coin. I have never met a self-proclaimed stoic who didn't just silently stew until they exploded when they let things out, normally on a single person in private and focused on a logical issue rather than just feeling their emotions as they happened and expressing them in a normal and healthy manner. Look up water torturer. All emotions are healthy, and a complete lack of emotional expression is a bigger red flag to me, even than an ability to regulate themselves when very angry. Fun story, a few weeks ago I was broken down in my truck with my girlfriend and her daughter at a gas station in the middle of New Hampshire. I struggled for a while to get the spare off, but the bolts were rusted there. I couldn't move it. After 20 minutes or so, the old guy sitting in the truck right next to me got out and introduced himself. He was a master mechanic and had all his tools with him. He helped me out and we got back on the road. He told me he'd waited a while to see if I was a man with anger issues or not. When he saw that I wasn't, he helped out and told my girlfriend I'm a keeper. That's why a lot of veterans are single. War, PTSD, and rage control are difficult for some people. Also depends a lot on their childhood. Not all children were raised equally, and some have seen hell before puberty. I think a lot of people forget what you've pointed out, that there's a reason. I've been dealing with anger issues for most of my life because when I was getting the crap kicked out of me as a kid, anger was the only defense mechanism I had. I hope that doesn't make me a horrible person. Obviously, anger issues are a bad thing, and we shouldn't excuse them. But it kinda hurts seeing how quickly people jump to "that guy is a worthless scumbag" instead of considering what could have created the problem. It's not helped by the fact guys are basically forced to bottle it all up. This reminder to parents of boys that there is a cultural pressure to discourage emotional expression of anything other than anger. So a lot of boys end up channeling all of their feelings through the socially allowed anger filter. Proactively encouraging your sons to express their full range of emotions completely and without judgment or embarrassment is one of the most important parenting lessons you can give. Similarly, parents of girls, make sure you teach them that boys feel everything just like they do. Dads should cry in front of their kids if they need to, or talk about feeling joy, feeling sad. Cis-het girls who aren't afraid of that won't seek out emotionally bottled partners later in life. Story 4. Cruel to animals. A massive green flag when I started dating my now husband was the fact that he was the first guy I had ever been with who had his own pets that he took very good care of. 2 cats, both of whom are still kicking 14 years later. They still sleep on him and demand his attention when he's near them. One of the things that attracted me to my husband we were dating at the time, had just moved in with his roommate. I came over with my little doggy, 8-pound mini dachshund, and his roommate kicked my dog out of the way as he was trying to sit on the couch. Totally on purpose. I will never forget it. I could tell that he hated animals. I spoke up, grabbed my little doggy, and ran into my husband's room. My husband moved out that week and moved in with a couple of other friends. I remember I didn't really understand how sad and uncomfortable it made me, but I could tell it made my husband very angry that his roommate did that. Sophie just passed away this year at the ripe old age of 19 years old. My husband and I loved that dog more than life itself. I'm not saying that we got married because he loved dogs, but it was definitely one of the reasons. You know, John Wick and everything. It can be subtle. A guy I briefly dated used to kind of tease animals in the normal way that happens when you play with pets, like dangling a toy or throwing a thing and making them wait to go get it. I never paid much attention when he was playing with other people's pets, but eventually I noticed that he would just never actually let it get the toy or get the thing it wanted. It was like he just loved being in control and watching the animal be frustrated. He didn't see anything wrong with it at all. The relationship did not last long after I noticed this. Another guy I dated took it upon himself to aggressively train other people's dogs in an unsolicited fashion. I really know how to pick 'em. Story 5. Condescension, especially when he doesn't know what the heck he's talking about or thinks he's smarter than he is. One of the most embarrassing moments I've had was when I was being really condescending about something and I turned out to be wrong. I felt like the world's biggest ass. I couldn't apologize enough, and now I'm really careful not to be condescending no matter how right I think I am. Stopped talking to one of my guy friends because of this. He's smart but doesn't realize where he's dumb, and is extremely arrogant. Then the patronizing starts, clearly because he's getting defensive over his belief being challenged. We were friends for a long time, but he called me brainwashed by left-wing media for being concerned about Project 2025. It was the last straw. My brother-in-law is like this. Parents used to think he had a wide range of knowledge, but it turned out he was just Googling trivia all the time. My girlfriend has a bachelor's degree in physics, soon to start on her master's, but whenever brother-in-law and my father start arguing about physics, which happens a lot, despite neither of them having even an A level in physics, let alone any kind of degree, they never ask her to weigh in. Most of the time she says they're both wrong. Story 6. Jokingly putting others down, then saying, "It was just a joke," like it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. Or they decide to see whether or not they meant it as a joke depending on people's reactions, like not as an abstract but clearly examining people. Come on now. Insist it's funny even if it's pretty clear people are pissed, and then explain why the joke is funny while insulting the already angry people. The latter happened to someone I know recently, and I was both called a dick and getting props from people who were there for telling him it wasn't funny and leaving the conversation. Sarcasm is the lowest form of humor. There's this guy in my town. It's a small town. Everyone loves him because he's always smiling and cracking jokes, but they're at other people's expense. And as soon as he sees he's struck a nerve, he tries to laugh it off and see if you'll laugh too. Freaking hate it, man. Like, it's not a freaking joke just because it ends in you trying to make someone else contagiously laugh that crap off. This one depends on relationships 100%. Doing it to someone you met a week ago or in professional situations is crappy. Doing it with one of your closest friends of 20 years? Yeah, good friends joke like that sometimes. And of course, there's always lines not to cross or ways things shouldn't be phrased. This is my own personal hell. Grew up getting made fun of, bullied, and wasn't taught how to deal with my anger, so it always got to me. So whenever they'd bully me and then saw I got angry, they'd pull the "it was just a joke" card, and unfortunately it worked every single time. I eventually started beating them up because of it, and unfortunately that made their side of the story look more convincing to the adults and teachers. They'd turn around and spread rumors about how I was crazy and had anger issues. Ended up spending most of my childhood secluded from everyone else, alone during lunch, PE, and recess, walked home alone and had no friends to hang out with after school or on weekends, and even at school no one would talk to me during or between classes. Even tried to join sports to make friends, and that did not work. Sorry for the minor trauma dump, but yeah, please, if you see someone do this, call it out. Story 7. This applies to anyone really, but being super negative all the time. Nothing is right, everyone else is the problem, and they simply cannot just sit down and enjoy where they are and the people they're with. I understand where this comes from, but you've got to learn to find your inner peace with where you're at. Things won't be perfect. Maybe the store didn't have your favorite beer today, or someone cut you off. But you've got to learn to breathe and let that go. That anger and dissatisfaction will kill you slowly, and it's always heartbreaking to see. This is one of the worst things ever. Whether it be for friends or partners, every time they open their mouth it's just "woe is me," and it is just crazy how big of a turnoff it is. It isn't a problem to complain here and there, but to some people it is like it is the only thing they know how to talk about. I used to work with a girl like this. I would relieve her in the afternoons, and we'd have like an hour overlap in which she would spend every breathless second telling me about every bad or stupid thing that happened to her that day. I dreaded it every day. I mean, it was a crap job overall, but that hour-long onslaught of emotional baggage was by far the worst part. I kept thinking, God damn, this girl has more problems every morning than I have in a year. Not a quality I ever liked in a person, but that experience has made me triple red flag it every time I hear a person talking like that. I'm guilty of this, and I'm not proud of it. Recently started meditating without really knowing how to. It's amazing as I started looking at my own faults in a way I never had before. I'm not saying I figured it all out. Heck no, I'm still working on it and expect it to be a lifelong process. I'm starting to see some of the ways I have pushed people away, and it hurts. To be honest, I honestly didn't know what I was doing wrong, ignorant and blind to who I was and how I made people feel. It wasn't even because I was mean, not like that at all. It was because I was a negative person and people could feel it. It's sad and regretful looking back, but I hope to change that entirely. I want for once in my life to be at peace and happy in my own skin. I want at least one person who truly wants to be around me and not because they have to. This is actually making me tear up right now. Admitting these things to someone, even strangers, is therapeutic. Thanks for reading. Too bad I can't shut off my depression, or I would do so in an instant. I've been living literally half my life with this problem, and I genuinely lost the ability to perceive what is supposed to be the normal I am supposed to work toward. What does a normal relationship look like? How does friendship work? What does love feel like, or being safe with someone, even non-romantically? What are the signs that I can genuinely trust someone and don't need a plan B and plan C just in case? Stuff like this. I can distract myself sometimes and then things kind of work out for a bit, but every few months I will inevitably crash out again, ruin the few things that might be going good for me, and then flounder for a good while before I find a new distraction. Some people see things as a whole spectrum between good/positive and bad/negative. I've experienced plenty of times where basically not giving a 5-star rating is distorted into me being negative. I have many preferences too. Just being honest and realistic shouldn't be confused with being negative. Just because something isn't perfect, and what is, doesn't mean I don't like or enjoy it. And sometimes something being really close to perfect has me commenting on that last little thing. Doesn't mean I'm disappointed or anything, it just means some little thing might have made it perfect. It's like being just outside the bullseye, not missing it completely. Story 8. Not being able to communicate, getting annoyed or irritated and not telling me why, or randomly getting angry, never being able to take control over their actions. This is real. I had an ex that would randomly get moody and brooding, and I'd literally have to force him to say what was wrong. I know that's not healthy, but otherwise he's literally never discussing his feelings but would treat me like I didn't care. It literally always turned out to be that I wasn't giving it to him enough, which made me feel like I had to in order for him to be happy in my presence. I have to say, as a man, I am really surprised this generic "men don't communicate" statement still exists. People don't communicate. Ask any man how well his girl communicates and how clearly she articulates her needs and agitations. "Baby girls, what's wrong? You look upset." "I'm fine." Later with her friends. "I'm so angry with him. He should have known better and done something without me having to say it." Communication is a learned skill. Both genders are bad at it until they are forced to work on it. Not being able to communicate is so huge. I used to have this friend who would not ever talk it out properly, and it led to so many misunderstandings. I'm so grateful that my girlfriend is really good at communicating because we can actually talk about our problems, and seriously, it's a breath of fresh air because of how many bad communicators are in my life. Story 9. Interrupting me with a totally unrelated question or statement, blatantly not listening or showing interest in what I'm saying. This is something I'm working on, but my autistic and ADHD brain jumps from comments in the conversation my partner makes over and over until it seems completely random, but I was following along, I just got excited about something loosely connected. I've started telling him, "Sorry I zoned out, but I feel embarrassed." I'm not trying to, and especially if he's telling me something important. I feel like absolute crap, but I find it better to ask him to repeat it than to just pretend I heard. Also, about the "sorry I zoned out" line, he knows I'm not neurotypical, so I hope he understands it's not intentional. He says it's okay, but I've got a hard time reading people, so I don't know. Yeah, I was on a date, and the guy was talking about himself the whole time. I listened, and he was genuinely funny. He talked about a problem he had with a friend, and I empathized with his situation. When I started talking, he interrupted me many times without saying sorry or carry on later, and when I wanted to tell him about a similar problem I had a long time ago with a friend, he just dismissed me and started talking about himself and his life again. So I interrupted him and left him there to talk to his cup of cappuccino, cause he seemed to not see I existed in front of him. I just had a friend invite herself to my solo birthday trip, and she did this my entire birthday, complaining and ranting about her family because my grandma died earlier in the week and reminded her of her family. Anytime I'd speak, she would interrupt me with 2 words like, "Should we go eat?" or just talking about something else. I barely spoke all day unless I asked a question to her or repeatedly said, "You must be close with your family. You talked about them nonstop all day." Not listened at all, no room to be sad about my grandma, who was the only family member I was close with. She continuously kept saying she wasn't close with her family because I was not, and she was trying to one-up me as if it was a flex. And definitely no talk about my birthday. She seemed to have forgotten. Worst day ever. I also have ADHD, but I'm not an asshole. There's a major difference. Story 10. Negging. Or any of that other pickup artist BS. As a guy who used to do this, it worked like a charm. However, my relationships never materialized because I came to realize how shallow I was. I would use this behavior to make myself feel better because I would lie to myself thinking I can get whatever girl I wanted. Well into the 100s thinking this is what being a man was all about. After a few years of therapy and a lot of self-reflection, I have learned that this was a way to deceive people of how sad and angry I was inside. I totally agree this is a red flag and girls should stay away from guys like this. Story 11. Spitting onto the ground. Why do they do that? In athletics, it makes sense. Your spit gets kind of thick and sticky and makes it seem like your mouth is more dry, so you spit. Also, why a farmer blow is needed sometimes. If it's a long run or something, it's pretty doubtful you have tissues on hand and you don't want to deal with a clogged nose when breathing is a primary need. But just out in public should definitely be a no-go. I have a big yard and will spend several hours outside mowing, trimming, etc. I also have allergies, so I always sneeze and have to clear my nose one way or the other. I also tend to get grass clippings blowing in the wind and have to spit when they get in my mouth. But that's all in my own yard. I'm not spitting or blowing out snot rockets when I'm having lunch outside of a restaurant. Construction guy here. Sometimes we're in areas and working so hard in the heat it doesn't matter. I'm not making excuses. We could try to do better and get a cup or something, but that seems even more wasteful material that we're already killing the planet with. So to be fair, it's a hard mix of we're usually in the middle of nowhere or can't get enough water in us even if we constantly drink, which we can't because we got work to do. And not having the materials or option to do it elsewhere at work outside, which causes a sticky nasty buildup in the mouth and nose as we're dehydrated. Then it becomes a habit of hard to turn off when you're not at work. This is for the guys who do this that are hard-working laborers of some kind, more of a work situation out of necessity that gets dragged into us being in our own world and not thinking about other people in the moment and doing it outside of work. I've done it and the snot thing too out of work and immediately have been like, that's pretty freaking gross. I have to stop doing that in public, only to do it again because it's a damn work habit. Some guys are aware of it and actively try not to do this, but for me and a lot of others I work with, this is the why. I just realized I do this in public mostly at lunch, running out of the gas station or something, and don't nearly do it at all on weekends. Story 12. Putting down other women to try to compliment you. Like, I'm so glad you don't wear fake eyelashes and makeup like some women. I'm so pleased you're not one of those girls that dresses like this. At least you're more intelligent than most women. Ew, dude. In a similar vein, I have 2 degrees and I'm working towards my doctorate, and I get a lot of, oh wow, you're actually really smart, which usually means, I didn't expect you to be clever because you have big tits. Right. The actual way to compliment would be something like, I like your style, you look great, and I enjoy our conversations. You always have thoughtful and engaging things to say. Really, in any sort of situation, you should focus on what's good about the person in question, not what's bad about others, in your opinion. Nobody should have to belittle someone else to give a compliment. I always think it's a red flag when you're dating someone and the conversation of past relationships comes up, and I hear them say, yeah, she was crazy, with little to no explanation. It usually makes me think they haven't processed the relationship and learned from it. Not saying a guy can't have a crazy ex, but I think that statement is typically used by guys who haven't considered the complexities on both sides that can bring a relationship to an end. One of my best friends is a guy. He's currently in a relationship with a girl for about 4 years now and was married before that. A few weeks ago, he came over to help me plan on some home renovations and I took him to a late lunch as thanks. I had just gotten back from a long bike ride before he showed up, and I didn't bother changing or anything before we went to the bar. Very normal of me, I admittedly don't put a lot of effort into my appearance most days. He was astounded and was all, you know what? You're great. I'm so glad you're comfortable going out looking like that. I always have to wait almost an hour to leave the house when I have plans with my girlfriend. And I know that was meant to be a compliment, but 1, he's complaining about the woman he's with, which is yucky, and 2, it's making me feel like I look like a troll because I'm not all concerned about being pretty every time I leave the house. I know he's been attracted to me in the past, and still sometimes floats that hint towards me, knowing it's just not something I would ever be interested in, but why does the fact that I'm not concerned about people's perception of my appearance matter? Like, that's one of the areas I don't need validation in. As an aside, during that lunch I talked about a study done about the science of sex appeal, and how the way a person smells to you is allegedly indicative of if your immunities differ in order to produce more resistant children. After that, a mutual friend told me that he was all, "Did you know that if your partner smells bad, you don't really love them?" while expressing that he doesn't think his girlfriend smells good. Not the takeaway I expected him to have, but I continue to wait for that train wreck of a relationship to fall apart. Story 13. Simping for strangers online. Seeing that a guy is really into corn and stuff like that is probably one of the most unattractive things possible. When I was looking for a relationship, I would immediately be disgusted and avoid guys when I saw that. You can always tell they watch corn, too, based on the conversation. They will say a fantasy they have, probably from corn, but it makes it sound like the last few women they were with liked it. More likely it never happened, but they saw it in corn and thought it was real life. Corn is geared towards the male population mostly, so of course it's going to show the women being submissive. The industry itself is gross and rife with abuse. It gives me the ick. How do you judge whether someone is really into corn rather than the normal amount? How do you learn about a dude's corn habits unless you've already been in some kind of relationship with them? I'm genuinely curious about this. I tried meeting people on different apps and sites. Reddit was one, and it's easy to just go through their profiles on Reddit and see them making gross and pathetic comments on corn subs. Then some guys just have it all over accounts that aren't hidden at all, and I could see what they wouldn't even try to hide how into corn they were. I have oddly seen a lot of guys that are very open and public about their corn use in the short time I was talking to guys before meeting my current boyfriend. It makes it obvious that they have an addiction. Story 14. Inability to clean or maintain their space. Hun, I'm not signing up to be your new mommy and spend all of my time cleaning up your fecking messes. If you're a grown adult and you can't wash a dish, sweep a floor, or do your laundry, then you're definitely too immature to bother sleeping with. Mental illness, neurodivergent, or disability aside, which is a whole other matter to consider and discuss before joining a relationship, I'm talking strictly about learned incompetence. They grew up having everything done for them and still expect that treatment as an adult. Absolutely not. I'm your partner, not your replacement parent. This is what my ex-husband never understood. He wanted me to treat him like his mother did, literally asked me to tell him good job and hype up his accomplishments like some personal cheerleader. His mom was the terrible type who raised her son to believe he was never wrong and deserved a participant trophy for life. When I realized this, from then on, if he touched me, it was like having a cold, slimy fish flopping on my skin. Physically repulsive. I could never be sexually attracted to someone with the mentality of a child. Then he started asking to get in there, like I was an object. So glad I'm divorced with cats and never gave him kids. Story 15. Lack of communication. We women know you have brains, emotions, and thoughts, so when you pretend nothing is bothering you or pretend you're not human and refuse to find your words, it's just isolating and annoying. I was actually pleasantly surprised as I got older because more of my male counterparts had figured out that being emotionally constipated isn't an asset. Story 16. This is true for both sexes, but unfortunately considered more acceptable for men. If he is not nice to others who are not in their family, friends, or superiors. You used to be easily able to spot these by seeing how they treated the service staff on the first date. However, some people learned that women look for that specifically. Now you need to notice carefully how he talks to other people. If all or most other women are annoying to him except you and his mom, red flag. If people need to earn the right to be respected by him, a red flag. Basic decency is the bare minimum. You can perhaps lose that right, but no one needs to prove he deserves it if they didn't do anything terribly wrong. If he doesn't see why he should perform basic acts of kindness, like telling a stranger they dropped their wallet because it's not his problem, a red flag. Animal abuse or the joy of seeing others suffer, a gigantic red flag. Basically, if he doesn't see others as deserving, he can't ever truly love. No matter how nice and considerate he is to you, when there's no conflict and he deems you worthy, he can't ever truly love. He can own, but that's not love. Story 17. Literally whatever you were gonna say as a joke, just say it about yourself. Speaking of small things, points at your own crotch, I may be ugly, but at least I'm dumb. John, you might need to hit the gym. You don't want to have your girlfriend open the pickle jar like I always have to. I don't know, the stupidest things pop in my head, and I used to just make a joke at someone else's expense, but I literally just make it sound like I'm putting myself down. Self-deprecating humor. Maybe watch some videos on it and you'll switch it up. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you want to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.